Comes Home is the third and probably last installment of the Annabelle series, completing their little Annabelle trilogy inside of the Conjuring universe. And this film takes place about a year after the Warrens claimed Annabelle from the beginning of that first Conjuring film. Their young daughter Judy is staying at home with a babysitter and her friend for like a night, but for her own reasonings, the friend goes down into the locked room that the Warrens keep all of their creepy possessed stuff in, touches a bunch of stuff, unlocks the door that Annabelle is kept behind, and now she is out. She and a bunch of other demons are causing trouble for these guys, and they have to survive the night, get Annabelle back into her box before it's too late. I was really skeptical going into this film. As I mentioned in my last review for The Curse of La Llorona, the Conjuring universe is 3 good and 3 bad right now. You have The Conjuring, Conjuring 2, and Annabelle Creation, but then you have The Nun and The Curse of La Llorona, which are very mediocre, and then the first Annabelle, which is garbage. And this film is not only written by Gary Dauberman, who is the same writer as Annabelle 1 and Annabelle Creation and It and The Nun, but it's also now directed by him. Now, obviously, I liked Annabelle Creation, and I also liked It. Those 2 movies are made by Andy Muschietti and David F. Sandberg, who are really talented. The first Annabelle film is from the director of Wish Upon, and that's why it ended up really bad. And The Nun, I'm not really familiar with Corin Hardy's previous film, but it was very clear that his direction really wasn't elevating the screenplay at all. And I really do think that Gary Dauberman is one of those writers that can be elevated by a good director. So when I found out that he was directing this film himself, very hesitant, really, and especially seeing how some of the other Conjuring films, especially La Llorona and The Nun, were treated, I was just really concerned going into this thing. But walking out, I actually was kind of surprised. I had a fun time with this movie. Is it a perfect horror film? Is it one of the best in the Conjuring universe? No, but for what it is, pretty much just a fun, spooky, haunted house movie, I had fun with it. Because James Wan is attached to this, you get a ton of great filmmaking ideas when it comes to the horror sequences, and a lot of them are really cool, and I thought were really well executed. Do you get the loud noise at certain times? Yeah, but it also helps that it's actually accompanied by something that is actually a little scary even without the sound, and also the fact that you also care for the characters in the situation, because the scare is only as good as the characters that you are following in said scary scene. So I was really enjoying what Gary Dauberman was doing behind the camera. Because since the Annabelle doll is now in the room with the possessed stuff, and since that's a conduit for spirits, and pretty much they're all going through her to get to them, they had a lot of great opportunities to really go all out with what they could do. You have this guy named the Ferryman, who basically you put 2 coins over your eyes, he collects your soul. You have some stuff going on with that I found really interesting. You have this wedding dress that at first, when I first saw it, I was like, is that the dress that La Llorona wear? Oh my god, that makes sense why they made the movie before this came out. But it wasn't actually the La Llorona dress, it was just some crazy wedding dress that whoever wore the dress would make them crazy. So still, La Llorona really doesn't have a reason to exist in the Conjuring universe as of right now. But nonetheless, that wedding dress actually provided for one crazy sequence in particular early on that I absolutely was really getting into. And they also utilized the dress later in the film for a certain thing that I was actually really digging also. So I was really happy to see out of all the stuff they got here. Like, there's a possessed board game at one point, there's a TV that's like several seconds ahead of what's supposed to happen pretty much. And I thought Gary Dauberman and the creative team behind this movie actually did a really good job utilizing what they had in their hands here as far as what the Warrens had in their room and how they could implement that into the movie. They don't go overboard with like, there's like 1,500 ghosts coming at them. Like, they don't do that. They keep it very minimal. There's honestly one moment where they introduce this spirit. I don't want to give it away because I was shocked when I saw it, and I was like, they're not actually going to introduce that. Oh my god, they are. Wow, I was just really shocked that they were really going for it, and I had fun with it. The movie does have some cliches as far as the horror filmmaking goes. I already mentioned that there's certain loud sound effects that they play whenever something comes out, and that didn't bother me as much as something like a La Llorona or The Nun, because like I said, I was actually invested with the characters in this one a little bit. But I will say, though, that after a while, certain things did get predictable as far as the structure of certain sequences. Overall, it didn't bother me a whole lot, but it was a little noticeable. Also, it really stood out to me how certain characters take a long time to like move to a door or to like grab onto something or investigate. And that really stood out to me a little bit more. So there is still some typical haunted house cliches in this film, but I thought the way they were utilized and the way it was executed worked out. And as I've been hinting at this whole time, I actually like the characters. If I had to have a problem with them, though, it's that I think the main character and the supporting character should have been reversed. They introduced Madison Eisman, who was in Goosebumps 2 and Jumanji, as kind of like the really cool babysitter, and she's like the lead. And then they introduced their friend, played by Katie Saroff, as pretty much the way they introduce her, making you feel like she's just a supporting character friend who's going to be there for a bit, but she won't won't be a main focus, but then they actually give that character the interesting backstory. And I can't believe this. I was in the theater and I was like, oh my god, finally, after Child's Play and The Curse of La Llorona, a horror movie's actually taking advantage of a missing dad storyline. Holy fuck. This is something that I've been complaining about, that they just put in the movie and then they don't do anything with it. But in this movie, they actually do something with it, and I really like that. It gave the character a driving force and made her a more interesting character, and that's why I thought maybe she should have been the lead in this film, because as much as Madison Iseman does a good job playing perfect, cheery babysitter, she comes off more as a supporting character than Katie Sackhoff did. So I was honestly really surprised by that, because I was not expecting to like the characters in this movie, because I was going in apprehensive, obviously, because I had just saw La Llorona and how they treated the characters in that. But in this one, I thought they actually did a good job with her. And speaking of Madison Iseman, they also give her really awkward, funny moments with this boy named Bob, who appears every once in a while. He is so awkward, yet so sweet and charmingly funny, that I enjoyed seeing him whenever he popped up into the movie. I thought he and Madison Iseman had a good, awkward chemistry thing going on, and the way they actually get him more involved with the movie, I also like that too. There's really no characters that I dislike in this movie. Like, the movie's surprisingly funny. At least every character has at least one thing that kind of had me chuckling or laughing. There's this one moment where I thought, oh no, the school bully, but then they made it into a joke, and I was like, oh, thank God. I was worried that this was going to be a prominent thing. It's great to see Ed and Lorraine Warren obviously back, even though they're not in it the whole time. They're not main characters in this one. They're taking a big step back for this project, but I thought when they were there, they were good. It reminded me of that great old vibe I got from the Conjuring movies, just seeing those two work off each other so well. They have a perfect chemistry. Can't wait to see them back for The Conjuring 3 next year, baby! And also McKenna Grace as Judy. She did a really good job playing her. She's a really small child who's very fearful of things, but she's also got a strong head on her shoulder. She knows what's going on, and she at least can attempt to save herself in certain senses. So I really enjoyed that aspect to her character. I'm glad that McKenna Grace was casted as her, because she's a really great rising star at the moment. So overall, I actually had a pretty fun time with this movie. I thought Gary Dauberman and the creative team utilized the horror sequences very well, and though a couple times they kind of got a little bit stale because you could feel kind of the procedure of them, I was still invested with the characters enough, and I didn't dislike any of them, so I wasn't completely dismissing everything. I was actually more so getting into it, to the point where near the end of the film, I actually got touched in my heart. Not crying. This isn't Toy Story 4. I wasn't tearing up or, oh man, that's so depressing. Like, no, not that. It was just heartwarming the way they went about it. I think it would have been stronger though if we took more time to focus on Katie Sackhoff's character though. As much as Madison Iseman does a good job, she's a really great rising actress as well recently, but there's really not much to her character babysitter-wise. Like, she's just perfect babysitter who's very cheerful. You can put that in the supporting category very easily, and Katie Sackhoff has the more interesting story that they should have focused on the most. But that's not really a big issue with me though, because they spend plenty of time with her throughout the film, so as much as I think they should have focused on her, like, more, they still gave me plenty of what I actually needed out of a character like that. Also, I have one other issue with this movie. It also kind of concerns with the focus of the characters. There's one thing that happens to one of them, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I want to see where this goes. This is a really neat idea. It can add a lot of tension. But then the way they end it feels a little too rushed, and I think it would have been better, once again, if they had flipped it to the other character, pretty much. I'm not trying to spoil what happens, but I just think it would have been a stronger way to end that. But overall, had a fun time with this movie. I think Gary Dauberman surprisingly did a very good job behind the camera, because I was not expecting that. The cast did a really good job. It's surprisingly funny. I thought the horror sequences were really cleverly thought out. They have a lot of great new spirits in this film that they're probably going to make spin-offs to, and a good score by Joseph Bishara. He's been with this franchise for a while now, and I thought he did a really good job with this one. As per usual, he adds a lot of that creepiness factor to it whenever you're listening to it and you hear that atmospheric music that he does all the time. I'm gonna give Annabelle Comes Home a B. The narrative probably could have been made stronger if they focused on the other character more so than Madison Iseman's babysitter, but at the same time, there's plenty there to latch onto, and I cared for the characters. I thought Gary Dauberman did a good job writing that character and also just directing the whole film. It's a surprisingly solid end to the Annabelle trilogy, though not as good as Annabelle Creation, just by a little bit. I still really did enjoy this film. But if you've seen Annabelle Comes Home, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.